The jeweler's shop smelled of polishing wax and old paper. Mr. Henderson looked up when the bell chimed. He wore glasses held together by sheer willpower. He asked Mrs. Gable what brought her out on such a cold evening. Martha did not speak at first. She reached into her pocket and placed the 3 bangles on the velvet display pad. Under the shop lights, the gold glowed with the warmth of 1,000 memories. The appraisal. Mr. Henderson examined the first bangle through his loupe. He said Arthur had a keen eye. He noted the purity was significant because the hand-etched craftsmanship was a lost art. Martha asked how much they were worth. Her voice was steady, even though her heart felt like a trapped bird. The jeweler spent several minutes at his scale. The clicking of metal marked the seconds. Finally, he looked up. He said the market price for the weight was high. He offered $12,000 for the set. He mentioned he could get more at auction, but knew she preferred the direct route. $12,000 was enough to cover the church roof repairs. It was enough for a comfortable cruise. It was also exactly the amount needed for 3 months of the debt Chloe had accumulated. The heavy choice. Martha stared at the gold. She remembered the night Chloe was born. Arthur had slipped the second bangle onto her wrist while she held the infant. He promised their daughter would always be taken care of. But Chloe was not an infant anymore. She was a woman who called only when the past due notices arrived. She had laughed when Martha suggested she learn to sew. Giving Chloe the money would be like pouring water into a sieve. It would not lighten the load because it would just sink them both deeper. Henderson asked if something was wrong. Martha said no as her gaze shifted to the window. Across the street, the library sign flickered. She thought of the literacy program losing its budget. She thought of a young mother counting pennies for milk. A new chapter. Martha looked back at the bangles. They were Arthur's love solidified. Love was not meant to be hoarded in a closet. It was not meant to be wasted on those who refused to grow. Martha said she would take the $12,000. She requested 3 separate checks. Henderson reached for his checkbook and asked who the checks were for. Martha told him the first was for the Children's Fund, the second was for the city library. She paused with a small smile. She said the third check should be for her. She told him it was time to buy a plane ticket to Florence because Arthur always wanted her to see the statues. As she walked back home, her wrists felt strangely light. The gold was gone, but for the first time in 40 years, the weight of the future felt like an invitation. Years. She wasn't just filling a fridge, she was sending a message. At 10:30 p.m., the front door swung open. Chloe bounced in, smelling of expensive perfume and wood smoke from a lakeside campfire. She was carrying 3 shopping bags from an outlet mall. "Mom, I'm starving," Chloe called out, dropping her bags on the sofa. "The girls and I barely ate on the drive back. Did you get those groceries I mentioned?" Martha was sitting in the armchair in the living room, knitting in the dim light. "I took care of everything, honey," she said softly. Chloe headed straight for the kitchen. "Good, because I am famished. I was thinking maybe some ham and—" The sound of the refrigerator door opening echoed through the house. Then, silence. The revelation. Chloe stood frozen. The refrigerator was no longer empty. It was full. But it wasn't full of the things Chloe liked. The shelves were packed with gourmet, pre-prepared meals from the city's most expensive bistro, each one labeled with a bold black marker. Property of Martha. There were sparkling waters, imported cheeses, and artisanal chocolates. In the center of the middle shelf sat a single white envelope. Chloe reached out, her hand trembling slightly, and opened the envelope. Inside was a receipt from the jeweler. It showed the sale of 3 gold bangles. Below it was a second receipt, a printout of Martha's bank statement showing a balance of $0 in the checking account Chloe had just used. At the very bottom, Martha had written a note in her elegant, shaky script. "I sold my past to pay for your weekend. Since there is nothing left for the future, I have bought enough food to last me 1 month. I suggest you use your new boots to walk to the nearest job fair, as the cushion has finally gone flat. Chloe turned around, her face pale, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. She looked at her mother, really looked at her, and saw for the first time the thinness of Martha's wrists and the sharpness of her collarbone. She looked down at the $400 boots on her feet. They suddenly felt incredibly heavy. "Mom," Chloe whispered. Martha didn't look up from her knitting. "The guest room needs to be cleared by Saturday, Chloe. I'm taking in a boarder to help with the utilities. I've already posted the ad." The weekend